Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion, and what an interesting week we've had. The markets have been very, very strong. A little bit weak here early on Friday, but boy, the last 3, 4, 5 trading sessions, just an amazing stair-stepping higher and higher and higher, and a nice move to the upside. And that seems to be continuing, and it's been very, very strong. So, what was really driving the markets yesterday? Well, we talk about earnings season, and we have gotten way past the big bulk of earnings season as we got out of last week. But this week, we're still seeing some big names out there. Disney. Now, Disney yesterday, the movement has been really, really interesting as we've watched a variety of different companies as they reported their earnings and what the markets are looking for, the expectations, and can you exceed those expectations? Is there any part of the business that people can latch onto and say, you know what? We think that there is promise still in front of this. Well, that certainly was the case for Disney because the focus looked like it was all on streaming. And that was where the numbers were very, very strong. That was really obviously the takeaway. But yesterday, disclosure from a very large hedge fund manager who decided that Disney was definitely a buy. Well, that certainly put a little bit of fuel underneath Disney. It had another excellent move to the upside, moved up a couple of percent, but over 130. Now, the amazing thing is the options had been indicating this. I didn't know what to think about it. I totally misread it because even though the options were telling us, hey, going into earnings, we see some potential for an upside surprise, I didn't know if I bought into that whole thing. Well, I was wrong. And here's the stock going from $116 a share pre-earnings. Now, yesterday, up over $130 a share, actually even exceeded that. And there's been continued buying since. So really interesting how the markets are interpreting different parts of the earnings season. And that's something that we all watch each and every day, but each and every earnings season. What are people focused on? And what will be the most important elements of what they're focused on? And certainly in Disney, they were able to look past a lot of the negatives and look forward to, well, streaming and as vaccines, as we start to see some of the rest of the drug world start to get involved and be able to find something that's going to help us for the virus, that's going to push us forward. But people were able to look at that, and that was certainly the focus. Now, the Dow. All day long, it was flirting around green and red, and it was really interesting. But again, theme, the final hour or two, or maybe even a little bit more extended than that, a nice bright move to the upside for the Dow. And obviously Disney, one of those names that was definitely pushing it. Now, the NASDAQ, same thing. A late surge up about 90 points, nearly 1% move. That's also an unbelievable day, a record day, because closing up over 11,000 on the NASDAQ. That was something that everybody had been focusing on, the 10,000 number. And now we're talking about the 11,000 number and this huge run that we're seeing out of the NASDAQ, which is not just the Power 4 or 5, but a nice broad scope of different names in biotech and also obviously in tech, but also the semiconductors, a variety of things. Even airlines, quite honestly, have had a little bit of a lift at times, obviously up and down, and that's been all around. And that's something that also has been a big piece of what some of that movement's looked like. So casinos, another area. Take a look at what was going on yesterday with the casinos. Look at MGM up about 11%. We had unusual option activity in there yesterday. I talked about that on the halftime report. Exploded to the upside. And Wynn up about 8% yesterday. The real surprise, though, of the day, and I don't even know if we hardly talked about this yesterday on the halftime report, and I'm going to be on there again today. It's why I'm wearing the nicer shirt. But Facebook. Now, Facebook, the reaction yesterday was absolutely amazing. And the focus has been on TikTok and Microsoft and what's going on with China and the US and everything else. Meanwhile, in the backdrop, we're watching Facebook with a huge move yesterday, up about 7% to the upside. Really incredible. We had some huge volumes, by the way, in other areas, in the airlines and in the hotels. We looked at the option volumes, really, really quite extraordinary. And that was something that definitely grabbed some attention yesterday. When I talk about the NASDAQ, we talk about tech itself. Yeah, tech did have an interesting day yesterday, and it was Apple, it was Amazon, it was Google, it was Tesla, it was Netflix, all those names. But the chip names, again, and I keep bringing this up because it is different areas of the market that are also hitting high. So you look at the chip names yesterday, it was Cuervo, it was NXPI, it was Skyworks, and those names that were moving to the upside. And I didn't mention in that particular case NVIDIA and AMD and Micron and some of the other names that we bring up oftentimes. But it's been a really interesting thing to watch how different elements and different parts of different sectors are starting to push these markets to the upside. So gold, the GLD, yes, the option paper that just continues to flow there. I was looking at GLD yesterday. They're buying 28,000 of the 200 calls just out a week or so. SLV, I talked about this one yesterday on the halftime report as well for Unusual. That exploded, by the way, late in the day. But 25,000 of the Jan 39s. They bought 100,000 of the Jan 25s. These are huge numbers. And in the case of silver, we've seen shorter term. We've also seen longer term. They're pushing out to January. I consider that still longer term. I know we're into August now, but that's going out there significantly further than what we have been seeing overall. The VIX yesterday closed around that 23 level. You know, it's been hovering around as it's been pulling back. And how about those volumes yesterday? I talked about 30 million the other day. Yesterday, a little over 31 million contracts trading yesterday. So we had a big, fast start yesterday. The shift in the markets from being down a little bit to exploding to the upside late in the day, that I think all continues to be a big part of what we're seeing. So this morning, the market's had about a move of about 160 points to the downside. Everybody's waiting on these unemployment figures. What are those numbers going to look like? Are they going to be any better than expected? Well, they were, and they surprised people. Doesn't mean they're good, but looking for 10.6 in terms of where the rate is for unemployment, they came in at 10.2. You look at the employers added 1.8 million jobs, looking for something significantly less than that. So they are beating expectations, and very much like earnings, it's what the focus really is. And the focus is the expectations have been lowered. Are you able to get past that? And that is exactly what we'd seen. And the markets immediately reacted to that. They cut those losses all the way up into almost into the positive territory, at least to the flat line for sure. But we've slowly been sort of sifting down ever since. As a matter of fact, early on, down about 100 points. I'm looking right now, we're only 45 minutes of the trading day. We're down about 150 points. So about 0.5% on the Dow. Now, we're also getting dragged a little bit right now from the NASDAQ, which had been holding in there. It was showing a little bit of green, and that's actually pulling back a little bit, only about 0.3% to the downside. So call it 35 points or something like that. Now, what are some of the leaders in terms of the Dow, at least early on when the markets were trading a little bit better than they are right now? It was Home Depot, it's Walmart, it's McDonald's. But the laggers, what's pulling on it? Energy. Take a look at Exxon and Chevron. Those names, as we've seen a little bit of a pullback in crude today, those names definitely dragging on the Dow, along with Disney after that big explosive move. Throw in Boeing, and you can see why you're seeing a little bit of that pullback in these very large names that have a huge influence on the Dow. So, NASDAQ, what do we got? Well, Biogen. Biogen had a monstrous story out there. I'll get into that more in a second, but Biogen and Gilead, those names were positive early on. Those are leaders. Applied Materials and NVIDIA. Also, we talk about how this rotation, even within sectors, we're seeing more and more of that, but those are leaders today. So NVIDIA and Applied Materials, but the Chinese names definitely the lagger. So you take a look over at JD. JD just the other day popped from 63, got well over 65, got towards 66, and then with a lot of different, obviously, what's going on politically between China and the U.S., we are starting to see some huge pressure on some of these Chinese names. So the laggers in the NASDAQ right now, you got JD, you got Baidu, you got NetEase. Throw in the airlines as well, and you can understand why the NASDAQ is starting to pull back a little bit to the downside. So silver continues to just be an absolutely amazing performer. We've had that paper in the SLV that's been extraordinary over the last, call it since July 24th, so call it about a week and a half, 2 weeks. Big, huge move there. 28.50 is the last I'd seen. Gold off a little bit early on, and the VIX had been moving up a little bit. Now I'm looking at the VIX. It's holding right around 23. So fairly tight. And again, when we've talked about the contracted moves in the market, we've also seen the contracted moves in the volatility index itself. So the semiconductors, they're holding on to a little bit of green early, but if we continue to see this push to the downside, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of that pull and maybe see that SMH start to get into a little bit of negative territory. I brought up Biogen, and I wanted to get on that one more time because the stock got up and over $310 a share early on. And why is that? The Alzheimer's drug. This is the same drug that failed phase 3 just last year, but priority review status is what they're saying right now, and that's pretty exciting. And what that could do for the company of Biogen could be something magnificent. Now, We all know this has been a very difficult field for anybody in the biotech world, the pharmaceutical world. They try to go after Alzheimer. They've been after this for a very long period of time. But when they hit the failures, it's amazing how much that can hit those stocks. And it's a credit for Biogen that they've continued to push onward and forward, and they're still working on this drug. And this is obviously one of the worst diseases out there. So this is something that we are all focused on. And if they can get past the next levels, this could really be something. And that's why I think you saw that big spike up. It did pull back a little bit, but a big spike up early on over that 310 level. Now, little unusual option activity for you. So Zillow, one of the first names to hit today. Now, this is interesting. I've already reported earnings, but this is why this makes it even more interesting. Expectations of a move in a very short period of time, talking 2 weeks. These are regular expiring August calls, the August 100s, buying about 6,500 of these with the stock trading just underneath 81. So that's going to take a pretty big, bold move to the upside in a fairly short period of time. And one of the catalysts that you're looking for usually is something like earnings. That's already in the past. So for 67 cents up to about $1 is the price range as that was moving around. That's something that you're looking at with the 100 strike calls with the stock trading just underneath 81. That's going to take a big, powerful move. Now, if you understand all of the different elements that go into that, and that's why education is so important. I always say knowledge is king. Our guys can educate you and give you an understanding of what does it look like from a risk-reward perspective. What are all the elements that go into the pricing? All of that. That's something that I think is extremely important and something that we focus on each and every day. And it's one of the things that we really do press for people is to get educated in the area of growth. I just mentioned a little while ago, 31 million contracts yesterday. We have seen time and time again just some incredible months when we go back to May and June, July. Now here we are into August, and some of the volumes, summertime volumes, usually are extremely low. I know these are different times, so we're seeing those volumes hold in there. So if you have the knowledge, you have a much better opportunity for success. Nothing's promised, but your opportunities certainly move in your favor to have better success. Folks, have a great day of trading. I'll see you on the halftime report in just a couple hours. Should be pretty exciting. It's Friday. Enjoy your day. Happy trading.